Hello and welcome to another tier list video. Today we are taking a look at Chipotle ingredients. Now I am a huge fan of Chipotle. I've been there so many times. Definitely my favorite fast food place to go to. Love having their burritos, love having their bowls, and I've tried all their ingredients, pretty much every combination you can think of at one point or another. So starting us off, we have rice. Now white rice, I absolutely love white rice, not just on burritos or in bowls, but just in general. Rice is a staple in my diet. I would say I have it probably 3-4 times a week just in my own meals. And so I'm a huge fan of rice. I always go for the white rice, and I always do an extra scoop of rice because I really like that rice, whether it's in the bowl or in the burrito. I just, it doesn't add too much flavor, but it just holds the other flavors so well. And a huge fan of rice. White rice, definitely going to be a solid A tier because it doesn't bring too much flavor, but it is really good, and it takes on the other flavors of the ingredients really well. So, huge fan of white rice. Brown rice, on the other hand, is still good, but I'm not as big of a fan. The thing I like about white rice so much, as I mentioned, is it takes on the other flavors of the ingredients really well, and it doesn't really dominate the flavor profile. Whereas I find when I have brown rice, I usually taste the flavor of brown rice a lot more, and it can kind of sometimes stomp out the flavors of other ingredients that aren't quite as prevalent. So brown rice, while I like the taste of it, I usually don't put it on my burrito or in a bowl because I find it tends to dominate the flavor, and I taste, so much brown rice compared to the other ingredients. So brown rice, actually not a big fan of putting it on my burritos or my bowls, so it's going to find itself down in the C tier. Up next, we have black beans. Now, I'm also a huge black beans person. Black beans and rice just goes really well together. Black beans and rice is a staple diet in many countries, and I really like the combination of black beans and rice, especially white rice. Definitely always put this on my burrito or on my bowl, regardless of which one I'm getting. That being said, it's not a requirement. I really can't imagine having a burrito or a bowl without white rice, but black beans is something that, if it's not on there, it's not the end of the world. It's just a good addition for me. I like to put it on there. So for me, black beans, gonna be a solid B tier. Up next, we have pinto beans. Now, I like pinto beans. That being said, I don't really like them on a burrito or in a bowl. I think the flavor, kind of similar to brown rice, it tends to dominate the flavor a little bit for me. I mean, pinto beans, they don't have a super dominant flavor, but I find when I have them in a burrito or a bowl, I taste those ingredients a lot more than the other ones that I really want to taste. So pinto beans, actually really not a fan of. Definitely wouldn't put on my burrito or a bowl. Brown rice, I don't mind if it's there, but pinto beans, it actually does take away from the burrito or the bowl if it's on there. So pinto beans are going to find themselves down in the D tier. Up next, we have fajita vegetables. Now, these are another ones that I like to add a little bit of, not too much, because onions and peppers and fajitas can be pretty strong flavors, but I really do like having it on there. I think it adds a little bit of a, little bit of bite to the burrito or the bowl. So I like having it on there, but like black beans, if I don't have fajitas on my burrito or my bowl, it's not the end of the world, but definitely still like having them on there, so they'll find themselves in the B tier. Up next, we have the fresh tomato salsa. Honestly, I'm not even really a big tomato fan at all. I almost never add tomatoes to things, but I do add the fresh tomato salsa because I just think it adds, a little bit of, not to use the word, but freshness to the burrito or the bowl. I think it's pretty good. Adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of color, and well, flavor-wise, it doesn't do a whole lot. Always just throw it on there. I think it's pretty good. Nobody really complains about a little bit of fresh tomato salsa on there. Just adds a little bit of life to the burrito, so gonna find itself in the B tier. Up next, we have guacamole. Now, I absolutely love guacamole. I mean, I could honestly eat Chipotle's guacamole plain. Even though it's pretty expensive, I think it's like $2.05 just to put it on there for a small dab. I mean, I get it, avocados are expensive, but they're still kind of ripping you off there. That being said, I love guacamole. I'm always willing to pay the price. If I'm going to Chipotle, I'm going to splurge. Gonna get the guacamole every time. Definitely going to be in the S tier for me. Up next, we have the Monterey Jack cheese. Honestly, a really good addition. A lot of people don't go for the cheese, but I actually think the cheese adds quite a bit. When you get a bite of the burrito and you have a little bit of the cheese in there, I feel like it just brings it to that next level. If you don't have cheese, it's not the end of the world, but I find that when I do have the cheese in the burrito or the bowl, it just adds a little bit extra, a little bit of something more. So Monterey cheese, gonna find itself in the A tier as well, actually. Up next, we have the queso blanco. Now, I think Chipotle's queso is pretty good. It's not quite as good as Qdoba's queso, I will say. I think that's the one thing that Qdoba does have over Chipotle is their queso. But that being said, I think that Chipotle's queso is still pretty good. However, I'm somebody who gets a lot of ingredients on my burrito, and at this point, I think adding queso would just kind of, add too much. There's going to be too many ingredients if I add queso on there. The only time I get queso is if for some reason they don't have guacamole. I've been to Chipotle once or twice where they don't actually have guacamole available for whatever reason, ran out of avocados or whatever, but then I'll get queso just to add a little bit more, something to replace the guacamole, but it's still good. I don't personally get it. That being said, I still think it's pretty good queso and good enough to where it'll find itself in the B tier. Up next, we have the roasted chili corn salsa. Now, I'm somebody who I really like corn. I love canned corn, corn on the cob. That being said, I don't like putting corn on a burrito or in a bowl for a similar reason to why I don't really like brown rice or pinto beans on it. I find that I tend to taste the corn a lot more than other ingredients, and while corn certainly does taste good, that's not really the flavors that I'm going for when I go to a Chipotle, so I'm not one to put corn on it. It really doesn't bother me if it's on there, but I would never put it on a burrito or in a bowl myself, so corn gonna find itself in the C tier. Up next, we have sour cream. Now, I mean, personally, I'm just not a fan of the flavor of sour cream. If there's like a little bit on there, if it's in the bowl or the burrito, it doesn't really bother me, but similar to corn, I'm never gonna add it because, well, unlike corn where I like the flavor, I actually just don't like the flavor of sour cream. I get that some people do, but flavor-wise, I'm just not a fan, so it's going to find itself in the D tier because it's not repulsive by any means. It doesn't ruin the meal if it's on there, but never add it on there myself. Up next, we have the tomatillo green chili salsa. Honestly, I love this salsa. It tastes really good. It goes super well on a burrito or in a bowl. You mix it together. It's just a really good green salsa. Really no complaints. It's got like a little bit of kick to it, so if you really don't like spicy things, you might not want to go for it, but in my opinion, it's relatively mild, and it's got the right amount of spice. Definitely like it. Super good salsa. Always got to have this on there. Definitely going to be in the S tier for me. Up next, we have the tomatillo red chili salsa. Now, this salsa is also really good, but definitely is spicier, so if you like spicy salsas, this is a really good one to go for. That being said, if you don't like spicy things, definitely don't get the red chili salsa because it does have quite a bit of kick. It really kind of depends on the day. If I'm feeling something a little bit spicier, I'll go for the red chili salsa. Or if I'm feeling something a little bit more medium, I'll go for the green salsa. But overall, both of these are super good. I probably go for the green salsa more often than not. But the red salsa is definitely really good, so it's also going to find itself in the S tier for me. Up next, we have the romaine lettuce. Now, the romaine lettuce itself, it's kind of like the fresh tomato salsa for me. Flavor-wise, it doesn't add a whole lot to the burrito or the bowl. If it's not on there, it's really not a big deal. That being said, I always throw it on there because I think it adds a little bit of texture, a little bit of color, and just a tiny bit of flavor. But it's more so about that crunch of the texture and adding a little bit of color to the bowl. I think it's just a good choice, and there's really nothing bad I can say about romaine lettuce, so it's going to find itself in the A tier. Up next, we have the meats. Now, starting us off, we have chicken. Chicken is probably my second favorite meat. I don't know what they do to their chicken, but it is really good. It's tender, it's juicy, it's flavorful. Just really, really solid. I mean, it's a close second behind my favorite meat. Really have no complaints about their chicken, though. Definitely a really solid choice, and it's also the cheapest one, I believe, so it's got that going for it as well. Chicken, definitely got to be in the S tier for me. Up next, we have steak, which is my favorite meat from Chipotle. I mean, I'm just a huge steak person in general, so Chipotle steak is no different. It's delicious. I love it. Never had any bad experiences with the flavor of their steak. My only complaint is that, it's a little bit more expensive than the other meats, and sometimes they kind of skimp you on how much steak they give you, which is a bit disappointing, but flavor-wise, I love it. It's so good. Big fan of the steak. Definitely going to be in the S tier as well. Up next, we have the barbacoa beef, which, well, I think it is a good meat. I've tried it a couple times, and I think it's quality, but I'm not as big of a fan as I am of their chicken or their steak. Barbacoa beef, it's definitely quality, definitely good. Definitely wouldn't be disappointed if it was, a replacement for my meat. So for that reason, it's going to be good enough to find itself in the A tier. Up next, we have the carnitas, which is their shredded pork. Honestly, just it's really good quality pork. I'm not a huge pork fan on burritos or my bowls, but honestly, pork, it's pretty good and it's good quality pork. So really no complaints about this one. I would say of the four main meats, this is probably my least favorite, but I still really like it. It's still really good and good enough to find itself in the A tier. Last but not least, we have the sofritas, which is their vegan meat, which I believe it's a tofu base, and they add other ingredients and spices, which, you know, I'm kind of indifferent when it comes to tofu. You know, just plain tofu, I'm not a fan of, but things that are made of tofu to try and replace other things, like here with the sofritas, I think the sofritas is pretty good. Even if you don't like tofu, you know, give it a try once or twice. Give it a chance. I think it's pretty good, and you know, if you are a vegetarian or vegan, I think the sofritas is pretty good. That being said, it's definitely not a replacement for meat in my opinion. Still tastes good, but you know, I'm still gonna choose chicken, steak, barbacoa beef, or carnitas any other day. That being said, it's still good. Can't complain too much about it considering it's made of tofu, so it'll find itself in the B tier. Well, that's my list. Let me know your guys' thoughts, and I hope you enjoy.